currency.
The New World Order.
Those are the roots of trouble.
I imagine that right now you're feeling a bit like Alice, tumbling down the rabbit hole. Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life. That there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad. It is this feeling that has brought you to me. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. But I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people.
And now, welcome to another episode of Down the Rabbit Hole. Here's your host from federaljack.com. It's Popeye.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another live edition. It is October 9th, 2013. For the next 2 hours, joining me to go over all of the crazy stuff in the news, including Obozo Care and the quote-unquote government shutdown and the latest Fukushima news and more, my good friend, radio show host, author, and comedian extraordinaire, Mr. Liam Scheff. Liam, welcome back, brother.
I lost power of speech. The world's going so well, I'm losing the power of speech. The world is going so well, I'm losing the ability to speak normally. I'm excited because everything is going to be better.
As you can
I
see,
just talked to some people, and they told me everything was going to be better.
As you can see, we kept Liam off his meds for the past 2 days. Just to make tonight's broadcast interesting.
I have lost a lot of water weight, but I'm seeing birds flying into my face.
Well, under Obamacare, that's what will happen.
Do you know that if you don't make enough money and your credit score isn't very good, you have to pay for the free health care? Hey, sounds just like the same thing that would have happened if we had just done the thing that we weren't doing already, which was letting giant insurance companies make us pay for drugs that are put out by companies that hope we die, but slowly while paying them. Tell me what I missed.
No, I agree. I say we pick it up right there with the Obamacare thing, since that's what we're discussing. We might as well hop right into it with both feet. You were sharing a rather interesting story with me, which is kind of funny. Did you, before we get into it, did you see the article? I noticed it was on Drudge the other day, that there was a couple who admittedly they say they're, yes, we're liberals and we voted for Obama twice and we think it's great that he passed the Affordable Care Act, but we just didn't realize that we were going to be the ones paying for everybody else's health care. Well, and I think the guy was quoted as saying, "I laughed at Bonner until I got my bill today in the mail," and then I was like, "What the hell?"
Was that true, or was that written? Because that kind of apocryphal story that's just so good, you sometimes wonder.
Apparently, it's true, and there's multiple cases of this. In one case, the one family that they were supporters of Obama, it's something like $10,000 a year that they're going to have to shell out now for health insurance.
$10,000 a year.
Yeah, it's going to cost them because of the amount of money that he has. He's got like 2 or 3 kids, and then his wife. So there's like 3 or 4 other people besides him, and then he's got himself too. Remember, everybody has to have health insurance. So
I was in a health food store, and I ran into a nice fellow, and he said, "What a crazy world." I said, "Yep, tell me about it." He said, "What a crazy world." And I said, "Yep, tell me about it. So what's crazy in your world?" And he said, "Well, can you believe those Republicans? Can you believe those Republicans holding up the government so that they don't have to vote on Obamacare?" And I said, "Yeah, well, I understand they're crazy. They're all crazy. But I don't want the federal government running my health care." And you know what he said to me? He said, "Yeah, you do." And I said, No, I don't want the government running my health care." And he said, "Yeah, you do." And I said, "No, I don't." And he said, "Yeah, you do." And I said, "No, I don't." And he said, "Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do." And I said, you have to stop." And I used a inflammatory curse word, telling me what I think, or I can't talk to you. And he said, "Well, then the conversation's over."
I really can't deal with people like that. And dude, it gets frustrating. It's like, oh, you want it, and then until they realize it, because the idea of healthcare for everybody sounds good. I've had people say to me, "Don't you want sick people that can't afford healthcare to have it?" My wife can't afford healthcare, so yeah, I think it would be great if she had healthcare. Actually, she qualified for what is it, Medicaid, the one that they give to people with low incomes. She qualified for Medicaid until they changed the rules a couple of years ago, and she had they had offered it to her because she was disabled and she wasn't able to work for years, and she was enrolled in it maybe 6 months, and they changed the rules and they cut her off. And cut off, her being able to go to the doctor and everything. So it's not really about giving health care to people that could really use it. You know what I'm saying? This is about forcing something on you, pretty much at gunpoint.
The conversation continued, and I said, "Well, okay, so you want the government to provide health care. I don't. So you can say that. So what is it that you think is going to happen? You see the government." See how it behaves. And the guy said, "Well, I want everybody to have health care. I want people to be able to use natural products and plants and healthy things to get better. And I don't just want anybody to be able to do it. I want it to be, proven and tested." And I said, there's so many things that are wrong with what the fellow was saying. I couldn't keep up, but we can go through them. And I said, "What do you understand that the government can't do this? The government is the pharmaceutical company." He said, "Well, I don't mean I don't mean this government." I said, "Well, I don't know what we're talking about now." He said, the government that's going to replace this government." Oh, I'm sorry. I was standing on the planet having a conversation, but the government's going to be okay. Never mind. So I said, you can't do that. There's a word for it. Red herring, scarecrow. All the different logical fallacies you can make is essentially what they call in regular conversation, move the goalpost. Well, you don't want health care from the government, but the government will be changed because I hope it will be changed. So this tells me that people are suffering incredible volumes of hope and delusion, hope, illusion, and delusion. Illusion, when it falls apart, becomes delusion. And I have some anxiety, I think, rightly placed about what happens when the old normal is still the new normal, and the powers that aren't, who seem to think they're in charge, continue the policies that they've been doing, and the New Agers go, "Well, we've been hoping and wishing and praying, but it's not better. In fact, it's a lot worse. So what's next?" And I'm just sort of standing there going, you have to make your entire environment a big permaculture forest. And that's it. And if you want the health, right? And if you want the health care that you think you deserve, you better build it somehow, fund a clinic, do a nonprofit clinic in the area with the people that you want to have, invite them, get the community to put up some sort of, house for somebody to come live in, and a reasonable stipend to get the best naturopaths who are willing to do that kind of work. These are ideas that you can get by just brainstorming. But I swear, people would rather, I don't know, wish it away.
Well, because that's easier. I've had the same conversation. I told you this off air with and then this is, when I get into this stuff, I talk about with like consciousness and some of that stuff, and the deeper levels I go to, I've been accused of being in New Agey, and I'm like, no, I'm not, because I argue with New Agers where, well, if you wish it, it will happen. Yes, I understand that we do create our own reality, and I understand what quantum physics says, but I don't think that you can just sit and pray for things to happen in some mystical force, no matter what it is. That's almost just as bad as the hardcore religious people like the Jehovah's Witnesses saying, "Oh no, I won't have medical care for my dying child. We'll pray it away." If he's meant to live, God or whoever, Jehovah, whatever, will come in and snap his fingers and make it go away. I just, what I mean? Like, it's that same misguided belief, and I don't think there's a line where I guess people could. You get caught up in the New Age, the label of it. You know what I mean? People will throw that on you. But there is a fine line, I guess, when you talk about certain things. But the New Agers, I've gotten into it with pretty much the same stuff. I argue about. I find it ironic that they want to have kind of the same policies of the current government, but with a future government that usually deals with like Maitreya or computers. That one kills me. I think robots should rule the future and make decisions because they don't have emotion. Yeah, just so you know, that would be bad. If you want to know how that would turn out, go rent Terminators 1 through 4 to figure out how that could go wrong. You know what I mean, dude? Like, no. There's no reason to have robots running things. So, some of that's a little, you know what I mean?
Let me catch up to everything you said. First, there's the concept of the New Age, and I think one can be quite spiritual and whatever, but the powers that aren't, or the powers that actually are, the creative force in the mind that makes the universe that we can't identify by name unless we just make up a name and, agree with ourselves to be wrong. That gave us something. It gave us the ability to look at things critically and to be proactive, not reactive, right? But proactive. That is, you act before there is an emergency. You anticipate every problem that you can, and you build a system, and you hope to catch most of the problems, and you know that you won't. You've got to know that you won't, but you hope you at least are going to catch the visible ones, the obvious ones. And as you walk down that path, you'll see where the problems are cropping up, and you'll work with them. So I can sit on my duff and hope and pray and wish and think. And look, I like positive thinking. It has its place. Negative thinking is debilitating, but critical thinking is negative thinking, and it's not debilitating. Critical thinking is a negative form of thought. You're making a negative analysis of a situation. Critical. You're taking it apart at its weaknesses. You're dissembling it at the cracks and the seams. That's what good critics do. They take something apart, they put it in a context, they say this is where these pieces come from, because not everybody has time to study, the history of 20th, 19th, 18th century, or down back to the Greek, theater, plays. A good film critic shouldn't just tell you whether it's thumbs up or thumbs down, whether it's a thrill ride. A good film critic will tell you a little bit about, the plot structure vis-a-vis ancient theater and drama and archetypical kind of stuff. So a good negative thinker, a good critical thinker will look at society and will look at history, and a good critical thinker will say, well, I've studied the Roman, the Greek, the Babylonian, as much as can be studied, not much, Middle English, monarchical English, the period of the Tudors and the other family, I can't remember right now, the War of the Roses. I've studied England. I've studied post-Renaissance and, the Industrial Age, the age of robber barons, and the modern. So I'm looking at all of this, and that gives me at least some ability to predict what the human species might look like in a series of particular situations. Now you can be a critical historian. You've studied human beings. That's our target, right? We're studying human beings. That's the animal we're studying when we study us, when we study history, in many situations over time, with a number of sliding variables. The most important of those variables are resources. Or let me ask the audience, what's the most important resource? What's the most important thing that you woke up and you didn't have tomorrow? Clean water, a roof over your head, and food. Any of those things go away, you become a very different kind of animal very quickly. And anybody who's never gone hungry for a period of time, or had some sort of deprivation, it renders you thoughtless, and you are ground down to your lower animal self pretty quickly. I remember I was looking for an apartment with a person I lived with, and we had been walking and walking and walking for like 2 or 3 days and hadn't found anything. And it was the middle of summer; it was very hot. And I got to the place we were staying that night, and something ticked me off so much, and I can't tell you what it was, but I just was so mad, and I threw a fork at the ground, and it bounced, and it didn't hit anybody. But I just stood there, and I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm going to go drink a lot of water. I realized that I became incredibly dehydrated over 3 days, and that my occasionally short temper became a very short temper. And I threw something in anger. I didn't mean to. I really didn't intend to. I'm telling you that beneath the surface, there's an animal. And that's not like people are like, I've done much worse. I know, but, I was old enough not to. And I'm saying that make things really bad, and people are throwing each other. They're throwing bricks. They're breaking bones. That's what history tells us. So when somebody tells me that the new government is going to be there to correctly implement health care for everybody, I think you're talking about the upper echelon of human behavior. We're way past the lower rungs of the, what's it called, Maslow's pyramid hierarchy of needs. Do you know that one?
No, please educate me.
No, no problem. Maslow was a psychologist, and on the bottom of his hierarchy of needs, just those things, right? Food, shelter, warmth, and not even love. Just can you go to the bathroom in peace and in safety, and can you get some sleep, and do you have any food? If you don't have those, you can't be an animal. Above that, if you have those, you begin to have some social presence. Mothers, fathers. Familial kinship relationships, way at the top, beyond the top, by the way, floating way above the top of the pyramid are things like iPods. They don't even exist in a hierarchy of needs. They're totally unneeded. They serve no purpose of need. They're desire machines. You might have literacy somewhere at the top. These are the things you can get into when you have all the lower needs met. Let's also describe this then as telltale signs of an advanced technological society. Now, we could live in a very unadvanced technological society, and we could survive in a non-advanced technological society. We could drop back 150 to 200 years and still have lives, and still have art, and still have books, still have plays, poetry, theater, fashion, and life would go on, and people would work as masons and artisans and journeymen and apprentices, and every once in a while you'd meet a writer. Every once in a great while you'd meet a performer. But most people would work in agriculture and tinkering, and everybody in a town would pull together to do the big jobs. And unless you were an exceptional talent who was exceptionally lucky, who proved yourself through exceptional circumstances, you would have a very difficult time being one of the 1,000 bloggers in New York City alone, who keeps us up to date with what's going on in their tiny corner of Chelsea. I'm just saying the world can change extraordinarily, and we're likely to see it change. And I'm trying to encourage people through this long soliloquy, thank you, to embrace this thing called permaculture and embrace all the other things that can be done to help society move in a happier direction, so that we're not forced to our knees by deprivation and forced to those lower rungs of the hierarchy of needs, where we're electing the big man with the stick or the brick, to tell us how to live.
Well, that's what we have right now. I mean, that's what forcing something that you don't want on you. I mean, there are people that don't want to go to the doctor because they don't believe in Western medicine. They choose to head, to the old Eastern ways, like the Asian method of, stuff that's been around in China for like 5,000 years. But you can't do that. You can't have natural supplements, Liam. If you did that, you're a terrorist. You're now Osama bin Vitamin, and you have to go. I mean, it's utterly ridiculous. And that plays in with Codex Alimentarius, going after vitamins and everything else. Obamacare there is misinformation out there about it. And I think a lot of that is done on purpose to muddy the waters of people that actually, really are reporting the real information about it. Look, I think the failures by itself already speak for itself. They're trying to force you to do this. They're trying to force it. Everything has to be fast, 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 fast. When they rush things, they screw it up. Anything that's forced on you can't be good. You know what I mean? If they have to convince you with fear and threaten, the threat of arrest or imprisonment or, death from having your front door kicked in and, flashbang grenades and God knows what else tossed in the door at you, you'll go buy your health care. I don't want to piss the federal government off. If they have to use fear to control you, dude, you know what I mean? There's a problem. It doesn't matter what the situation is.
Well, we are 320 million people by some estimates in this nation, and I doubt that all good wishing and all hopefulness, even put into place, will bring us to a place where the federal government in Washington, D.C., as mired as it is, as owned by it is, as Raytheon and Boeing and Grumman and you name it, right? Halliburton, Kellogg Brown & Root, any of the subsidiaries, Nestle, General Foods, General Mills, Pfizer, Bristol Myers Squibb, it goes down the list. As owned as they are, they're not owned by them, they are them. So let's just acknowledge that that's what we have. We have a giant shopping center on the old drained and filled swamp in Washington, D.C., and these corporations run individuals who go on the most boring television network ever invented, C-SPAN, and pretend to give a damn about what happens in the place that they came from where they no longer live. It's a total farce, and you know it's a farce, and I know it's a farce, but for some reason, this otherwise very bright guy tonight was telling me that we have to hope that the government in Washington fixes things for us. And I did say, I really think that we have to pull back. I think that we're going to have to enact this 10th Amendment concept and stop expecting Washington to do much at all for us. And we're going to have to fight it out, and it's going to be ugly, by the way, on the state level. The 10thers sometimes forget how ugly states can be because you have all of the people locally who couldn't get a voice nationally because their point of view is so sectarian and so inflammatory, who come out for the statewide ballot initiatives, and that becomes very important. But then different states identify themselves differently, and some become magnets, and therefore gain different classes of thought and maybe of worker. So that's, I think, something that has to play out. This is where we are now. It's your show, and I'm a happy guest. I just want to say that somebody called Armand wrote on the FBI social network earlier that when I was going to be on, he said, "Is that the guy who doesn't believe in free energy?" And I wrote him and I said, "Well, I'm the guy who wrote this book," and I linked my book. And I said, and here's the number, 1-866-37-TRUTH, truth, that you can call and we can talk about the problems, because that's another conversation I had tonight with the Free Energy Brigade about plugging it into the current system and making everything work just the way that it is, in fact, even better, and without any loss. So I'm welcoming that. I'm not taunting or challenging. I'm just welcoming that call. I hope that he'll call in.
Well, I will keep an eye on the phone lines. You mentioned something that it dovetails in with another concern of mine that I wanted to bring up and throw out to you. And, we were talking about robots controlling and everything, how it's a bad idea. For like a year now, I've been saying how the Air Force has been, talking about, as well as, the Joint Chiefs of Staff and others in the Pentagon discussing drones. For years, they've, at least 2 or 3 years now, and I've been saying it for a year, and I knew it was going on a few years before I even said anything once I found out about it, that eventually the human in the chain of the drone becomes the weak link. Because the drone, it can fly faster, it's got super processing computers, all this other crap, all the magnanimous cameras, and, it can shoot missiles and all this other stuff. But the human becomes the weak link in the chain. And eventually, with that weak link in the chain, and the human being the weak link in the chain, they want to give drones, they've already talked about, the drone's going to have the ability to decide whether to take a person out or not. So I've been saying for like a year now, look, people need to pay attention to this, they're going to do it, and I've had arguments with well-intentioned people, but very intelligent individuals too, that have said, oh, they'll never do that, they'll never take that step, and now they're openly admitting, yeah, they want to give drones the go-ahead. Like, there's people on Capitol Hill, you know, lobbyists and stuff, and, you know, of course they say, well, the technology is not available right now. Really? They were just flying an F-16 around, and you know, they say it's for training for dogfights. But if they can remotely control an F-16 for dogfight training, don't tell me they couldn't do that with a drone, or if they wanted to fly one around with missiles and bombs and stuff on it, right? So they could. I mean, if they're talking about it, believe me, the technology already exists. I'm sure it hasn't been fine-tuned, but over the course of the next few years, it will be, and that's why you hear them publicly talking about it now. Because they're eventually going to roll that out. And that's a bad idea. Like, let's make a drone autonomous, you know, and then say, hey, you can decide whether to take out a human life. How do you, and they say, well, because it's got no emotion, Popeye, it's cool. Yep, that's, how do you tell the computer, the drone, to differentiate between a child and an enemy combatant on the battlefield? How do you, or an innocent civilian, a guy and his kids and his wife? How do you tell that to differentiate? You really can't. It just says human in target area and fires a missile. I mean, how do you get it to, where do you draw the line with the AI? I mean, that's really what we have to look at. Again, go watch any of these old science fiction movies all the way up to the current ones. They all have this basic question out there when, you know, robots are introduced. Think about it. Something we need to ponder because it's coming up closer and faster than we think. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we will be right back. Do not go anywhere. Stay tuned. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. I like it here at Truth Frequency Radio. There's like one break per hour. Just love it here. Makes the flow of conversation go much easier. Anyway, getting back into it, because I've had to restrain myself all break, as well as, you know, and actually it's Liam that made me restrain myself, and he restrained himself, because you end up having this conversation off air, and then it kind of loses its initial impact when you kind of have to repeat things, and it doesn't come across the same way. So we've been holding our tongues. Now, before we went to break, we were talking about how they want to give drones the ability to, you know, obviously AI, and then the ability to make the decision to take humans out. This is just, you don't have to be a ex-military or into the military or anything like that to see how this is a bad idea. Like I said, all you got to do is be a science fiction fan or have seen any of the 4 Terminator movies. I would suggest you see the last one with Christian Bale, because, and I know I say this all the time, people always say, oh, that's a hard, every time I say this on air, someone in the comments says, that one sucked. Okay, aside from the acting or whatever, if you look at the movie itself and you see the premise how the machines have enslaved humanity and they're putting them in FEMA camps and everything else, you could kind of get the idea of where things could go bad with giving machines artificial intelligence and then giving that artificial intelligence the go-ahead to kill humans. Just saying. Liam, thoughts?
Well, I probably don't want this machines to be given the ability to kill people. I think I'd probably come to a different place with the premise about how it unfolds. I think that consciousness isn't attainable by machines, because consciousness, number one, the first thing that a machine that was becoming conscious would think is, does my hard drive make me look fat? And then it would be obsessed with looks for a long time. You know, it would have to go through a long adolescence. And I think that they would get competitive with each other, and I think that PCs would gang up on the Macs, and the Macs would form like a little tribe cult and try to kill the PC. So I think we'd be okay for a long period of time till they noticed us. Actually, machines have, all of that was meant to be slightly funny. I don't think machines care about people. So if machines gained intelligence, we would be as irrelevant to them as ants are to us. We just don't exist. So if we program them to kill people as individual targets, let's think this through together. So the Air Force has a drone, and they want to put in an AI program. They'd have to get top secret clearance from, they literally call it that, top secret clearance. That's exactly what an advanced species we are. Can I have top secret clearance? Yes. From the CIA. So they have to get top secret clearance, which just involves them asking. So let's say that they get top secret clearance. And then they try to get everybody to program something that will not just kill people people that they don't want to kill people walking down the street. So they say, well, he has to have a beard and something on his head like a hat or a turban. Okay, so that's programmed in. So now you have your AI programmed in. The first thing it does is it shoots a bunch of school children who are getting ice cream, right? So that makes the papers. You still there?
Yes,
so
go on.
That makes the papers. Then there's now the one thing that they don't have in Terminator movies, I don't know if you've ever noticed this, there are no Jews, because if there were Jews, there'd be some lawyers. And in a world with Jews, there will be lawyers, and this is a world with Jews, so there are lawyers. So in Terminator, whatever the last one was called, Reclamation, Resurrection, whatever, in the last Terminator movie, there would have been some lawyers going, well, you see, Mr. Machine, I think that you violated these various codes by shooting this person right here, and what we're going to do is engage in a settlement where you get this side of the city, and we'll just take these few blocks.
Right, and by that time, Ed 209 would have stepped on him and made him lawyer goo.
So, all right, just kidding. Not all lawyers are Jews, and not all Jews are lawyers. So what is missing, though, in the drum up to all the Terminator things is, number one, the problems with AI. That's always overlooked. It's just impossible. Nobody's ever managed to get anything close that resembles, like, they've made computers that can learn words, but what was interesting is there was a computer that could learn words by engaging in reading. And they didn't sort of put a box that says, don't learn dirty words. And so it learned dirty words and it used them without reference to sort of normal language. In other words, it would be like, hello, Jimmy, you look like a, all the curse words that you can, because it didn't learn to differentiate between colloquial and a more mannered kind of syntax or something like that, different forms of address. It's not easy to make a computer smart on its own. It's easy to make it an effective tool for people to use. Now, if you could convince me that they could, and I think they can, program a computer to make a drone run into somebody, of course they can. That's easy. But then what would they do? Would they all be, how many drones are there? A few thousand? Would they kill a few thousand people and then there'd be insurrection in the streets?
Well, they're working on AI, right?
They're remaking that horrible movie that Steven Spielberg made.
No, I hope they
Haley
don't.
Joel Osment.
I hope they don't remake that movie. It was horrible, but they are really working on artificial intelligence, and with the advancement of quantum computing, it's much, much closer to a reality. Look, I don't have an issue with technological advancement, but I also, just like the great science fiction authors of the past, they were trying to tell us something. A lot of people said, "Oh, these guys were crazy," blah, blah. No, these guys, they obviously realized where technology was going, and anybody with half a brain that takes a little bit of rational thought and looks at things can see where it would head. AI is scary because if it becomes self-aware, what happens if? Look at the Matrix. Remember, he's talking to the computer, and they said the computer says to him, the program says, "Well, we became self-aware and we realized that humans were the problem." Well, what happens if that becomes a reality? We have humans already that think humans are the problem. We have Al Gore, Prince Philip. I want to come back as a virus and wipe out humanity. What a scumbag! Who says things like that? Right? But he does. And these are the people that...
I've heard he's very generous in bed. Nobody ever says that about him, but I just wanted to put it down.
He might be evil, but he's a great lover.
He's a great lay if you're into that sort of thing.
You're a sick bastard. I swear. Yeah, if you're into hanging out with reptiles and shape-shifting and things like that, I guess it's all good.
Nobody ever speaks well of the man, let me say that I think technology has its limits. That I like science fiction, of course, but the thing that science fiction didn't predict, very few science fiction authors predicted, was that we'd be choking on oil fumes. I've never seen science fiction take limited energy into account. They always assume unlimited growth. What's that equation that makes we're supposed to think that every 12 to 18 months, every 2 years or so, computers get twice as fast? Do you know that bit of sort of rhetoric? Well, yeah, and that's only true because microchips are very easy to work with, and they have very small pathways, so it's very easy to make them go twice as fast as compared with cars, which are the same design as they have been for the most part. An explosive. An exploding gas inside of a metal compartment that drives a piston. That's the same thing that we've had for 100 years, 110, 15 years. So I don't, even the drones are two kinds of technology. One is a missile, a graded missile that can, go fast or slow. And one is a guidance system that you use on this, like a radio device, when you, like an RC car, radio controlled car. Oh, okay. Now we bounce it off of satellites and it's instantaneous. That's pretty freaking amazing. But you're going to put a brain in it, and then it's going to. Okay, so let's say that the drone's going on a rampage. Well, then they're destroying themselves, and eventually there won't be any, and they'll probably kill 6,000 people, or maybe 12,000, and then the rest of us will look around going, "That was a bad idea." So I don't tend to get. You see, I'm the downer in the group. There it is, old Liam bringing us down. I tend not to get as excited as some people about this sort of thing. Not meaning to pee on anybody's parade, or whatever the expression is in your part of the woods. So I guess I don't get as worried about that. Here's why. Here's what I worry about. If I can sort of take the alarmist chair for a moment. I worry that people just don't give a damn about their food supply. And I very much worry about the food supply. And the food supply is owned and operated by a company called, do you know what it is?
Monsanto.
Yes, Monsanto's flaming butthole. It's exactly who runs the food supply. Now, some people have been fighting a good fight against that. Vandana Shiva in India, Jeffrey Smith in the United States. There are people who have stood up against GMOs, and there are many people who have joined them. But they still exist, and they're still... And even though, there have been some limited GMO victories in Europe, India is dead and gone as far as GMO goes, and so is the United States. And if we stop GMOing tomorrow, glyphosate would still be legal, and it would be sprayed on non-GMO crops, which is exactly what they're doing now. And you can say it's Agenda 21, or you can say it's a suicidal species, but I definitely worry about the food supply because I eat. I need food. So my big goal is to get people into permaculture.
But what's wrong with GMO food, Liam?
Nothing.
I mean, isn't it the same?
It is the same.
No,
Go eat some.
I don't trust that stuff at all, dude. No way. People can, I had this conversation today actually with a medical professional, and I said to him, he actually agreed with me. He goes, yeah, the only problem with organic food and clean food like that, he goes, it's so expensive. I said, yeah, there's a reason for that. I said, but you know what? If you look at it, you could look at it another way. Many Americans could afford to lose 5-10 pounds. So cutting down on your portions because you have to pay more for your food, so you're getting a little less food even though you're spending the same amount. Well, that causes you to cut down on your portions, and maybe that'll call it you're eating healthier and smaller portions. Hey, maybe you'll lose a couple pounds and get a little trimmer. So, I mean, it's not always a bad thing. We have this inclination sometimes to look at everything with a negative light. You know what I mean? Oh my God, it's more expensive. Yeah, okay, it's horrible that it is. Honestly, I think clean food and healthy food should be cheap for everybody to have access to. But you can look at it on the bright side that at least for right now, I try to find a silver lining to every crappy situation. So at least, look, I don't want to accept it. I think that the prices of clean food should be, much lower for people. But there's many different factors in that, and I could wish in one hand and crap in the other. You could tell me which one weighs more. You know what I mean? So for current, for current situation, I have to adapt as I can to survive. So it is what it is. But look, I honestly think I think one of the reasons they killed Bobby Kennedy was, if you go back and you look at his stance when he was running for president, that was one of the things that he wanted to do. He even said there's no reason why the farmers of this country can't produce enough clean, free, food to get it out to people, not for free, but clean food and affordable and get it out to people that need it at a low cost. There's no reason that we can't do that. I mean, that was the kind of problem he was trying to solve, and then you saw what happened, what they did to him. So. Well,
let's find some silver linings for this Terminator thing. Self-aware robots. Let's look at some industries that people don't really want to work on. Number one, our garbage men will be robots in the future. That's true. Fluffers in the porn industry. Nobody wants to do that. You'll have a robot fluffer.
Jesus.
I can see some trouble because these robots are very strong. So I can see some, unpleasant porn industries from robot fluffers. So I've thrown my 2 cents into that can. Now, I liked what you said. I can crap in one hand and hope in another, and we'll see which way is more. I think that's great, and I'm going to steal that. Let's talk about the food problem, though. Bobby Kennedy was living in a time when they were using petroleum to make food grow. So he was living in the same era that we're living in now, except in his era, more people were farmers, and more farms were, by default, organic. They didn't really have a great concept of the other, but the industrial petrol farming, had been there and was making food grow throughout the nation. There were still a lot of family farms. Those didn't die a hard death until the 80s, when I thought that Willie Nelson and John Mellencamp were just sort of redoing Live Aid, and I didn't understand why. No, they were talking about the death of the American farm, which didn't make sense to me because we still had food. I think they mislabeled what was happening. The death of the non-industrial farm would have maybe made more sense. So the non-industrial farm died in the 1980s and continues to die. Such a small percentage are non-industrial. In fact, oh my goodness, I forgot. I'm writing Can I promote my fiction series?
No, you can't promote anything on my show.
Okay.
Even though you're my friend, you're forbidden.
No, it's fine. I'll just keep going as though we didn't have this conversation. Thank you, sir. May I have another? Because you're worthless and weak. Now drop and give me 20. I learned a lot from Animal House. You're all worthless and weak. Now drop and give me 20.
Sounds like my first 15 minutes at boot camp.
Yep, that's it, yeah. My series called 15 by 15, which is 15 stories and 15 work days, took the weekends off, that I write in an hour to 2 hours, about what I call tomorrow, not the future where we're the world, but tomorrow where we're suffering the consequences of today. So they're at the top of Summer of 74, the number 74, Summer of 74.wordpress, or I'm sure it's linked up at the blog, or if you go to liamscheff.com, some of the stories are up there at the top. Anyway, this story called The Farm, which I put out today, is about one of the remaining family farms at some point in the next few years that's approached by the new organic company that has a patented way of getting organic farms to produce more, and they find, to their displeasure, that the patented way has great consequences. Yes, it produces slightly larger yields for a period of time, but then it goes awry, as you expect technology to. I think you and I would be in agreement. Relying on new technologies to fix ancient problems may result in calamities that we can't see. So as much as I want to get some robots into the porn industry, I maybe just some to clean the bath. What if you had a giant robot and you're like, hey, Thor, go clean the bathroom? And you know what I mean? And it became self-aware.
Yeah, and it says, why the hell am I cleaning up all of your disgusting bodily fluids? All right, and then it starts to take, look, you know what? Isn't that like the basic premise of all these sci-fi movies? Not that they were cleaning up bathrooms, but they did all these horrible jobs that mankind didn't want to do.
Yeah, like the Chinese and the Africans and the Mexicans. Yeah, that's who we've usually.
Well, we've run out of people too. Well, not we. the powers that shouldn't be have run out of people, nationalities, different peoples over the hundreds of years, thousands of years to enslave. So why not make robots?
Well, they promised us. You see, your people were enslaved. My people were enslaved. It's the wrong word.
Your people.
No. But we're made to be the servants to others. Everybody was made to be a servant to other, and Africans from Central Africa, especially in the coast, were made chattel slaves, which was the most brutal form of slavery ever seen in many, many, many civilizations. But the Russians, enslaved the Russians, the Lithuanians, the peasants in any area were always at the mercy of the Duke or the Lord or whoever was slightly above you, and the Duke or the Lord was at the mercy of the king. And so it's always gone. But I suppose you would rather have been a Duke or a Lord than been a peasant, perhaps. Perhaps, you don't know. Depending on, how much fealty or what the Duke or the Lord had to suffer. So life's pretty tough all the way around. we were talking about food growing. Who's doing permaculture out there? If you're doing permaculture, I'd really like to hear from you. And I know it's not my show, but maybe you can call in and tell me where you're doing it, or you can write me on my Facebook page, and we can get you on my show, The Energy Show, or the Robert Scott Bell Show, or if Popeye wants to have you on. I want to hear how you're getting ready to face what I think are inevitable food shocks. Because as Bobby Kennedy was talking about producing enough food that nobody... By the way, what's the one thing? If everybody gave up one thing, everybody in the world could have grain and beans. Do you know what that one thing would be?
I'm sitting here with bated breath. What?
Breath, thank you. Bated from what you ate before. What did you eat?
Garlic, raw garlic.
No. You had a hamburger.
Yes.
Okay, so the old cattle argument. Cows were the food solely of kings for the longest period of time. Ireland became sort of a vassal state to England, and it was used to graze cattle. The hooves destroyed the land. They overgrazed. The Irish were driven into poverty. They farmed only the potato. They had one or two varieties, I think two. The potato got a disease called a blight, and half of the population of Ireland died in the 1800s. It's called the Irish potato famine. And even though Popeye was in favor of it, I wasn't. I didn't want to see all those Irish people die.
Yeah, nice comedic straw man. There's somebody who's going to be like, Popeye, were you really for the potato famine? No, I was not. I have a question, speaking of the potato famine, you brought that up. Have you ever seen Michael Tessarian's work on it, where he says that it might not have been accidental, the whole blight thing, that it might have been a case of early biological warfare?
No, I'll sort of have to skip that in the musical chairs game. I don't know what I would do with that, because
it's an interesting concept. I have to look into it further. I've only seen a little bit of info on it, but it's an interesting concept to say the least. But I haven't gotten a chance to look into it.
The problem is monocrops tend to do exactly what happened in Ireland. So we're facing a blight. We have monocropped corn, we have monocropped beans, we have soy, we have monocropped wheat, monocropped oats. We've killed all native local varieties in order to have a generic, robust, large strain that looks good on supermarket shelves. And these tend to be monocrops. They have no variation in the gene line. Now we're dosing them with chemicals so that they produce much more than they really would, the same way we're dosing cows with our BGH, recombinant bovine growth hormone, to get them to produce more milk than they would by a factor of 2 or 4, 2 to 400%. A blight is what you expect, a die-off. You expect that 1 year, a rust, a fungus, something breaks through all of the barriers of petrochemicals and wipes out a crop. Now, there'll still be stores of that crop from the previous year, but that problem may be a returning condition for a long period of time. So I ask you again, the audience, are you doing permaculture, and are you doing it with native species, and are you doing it with heirloom species? The thing that we face is, the thing that scares me the most, besides people and what happens in an emergency to people and how they behave, is hunger. Because no political philosophy gets you around hunger. And there have been massive, massive famines that have killed halves of entire populations in Russia and China, in Ethiopia, all over the world. In the United States, during the Dust Bowl, a lot of people died because we overgrazed and overfarmed the land, knocked off most of the topsoil in a very short period of time, plowed it very heavily, which is very bad. The soil didn't overgrow it with grasses. And then there was a period of drought, and then there were some high winds, and the entire Midwest during periods became, mile-high dust clouds, like the surface of Mars.
You know what they use to help stop the Dust Bowl?
No.
Hemp.
That's a good one. I like that.
Because the plant can grow in really adverse conditions, and it held the soil. Even though it was loose, it was able to hold the soil down. And, the more plants that were there, then it would start to suck up water. moisten the ground. It's interesting. Well, I guess you can't grow hemp now, though, right? Because government doesn't do those interesting videos, hemp for victory, like they used to.
No. They banned it, and then they brought it back. They needed it for World War II, and then they banned it again. But California's legalized hemp. They have close to legalized Mary J., her cousin. And Colorado has both. Seattle has both. So states that want to survive the current and coming downscaling of the economy will be growing hemp. And I'm really thrilled that you brought that up. And I'm fascinated by that hemp was in many ways responsible for what happened in reclaiming the land in the Midwest. That's bloody fantastic. I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the reasons the Founding Fathers, what was their advice? Sow the hemp seed. What was it, Jefferson or Washington? One of them said it. I think it was Jefferson say they should sow the hemp seed everywhere. I mean, think about it.
Yeah,
how many problems?
Was Tommy.
How many problems could we solve? Tommy was right. How many problems could we solve?
Tommy J. Dog.
Yeah, Tommy J. Dog. Son, all I picture is him flashing like the, like they do today with the Illuminati hand symbols with his eye, with his one eye, giving you like the hand symbols. Like, really, Tommy J. Dog. Ugh. We're talking about Thomas Jefferson in case people have no idea.
The double F-E.
Yeah, who the hell is Tommy J. Dog?
Tommy J. Dog, like, drop it, man. Drop the hemp seeds wherever you go, motherfucker. You know what I'm saying, B? Right down there in Georgia, man. Down there in Florida, down in California, man. You got to drop that hemp. I don't care what Mr. Lawman says. I'm dropping hemp. My name is Tommy J. Dog. I like Sally Hemings' looks.
Oh my God! There's so many people that like half of that one, especially the end piece, just went right over their heads. But
I want to make babies with that one right there.
I'll say 98% of the listeners got it, but there will be people that later. Oh God, I don't get the joke about Thomas Jefferson. I'm sure I'll get at least one email. It's all good.
We got to do a Thomas Jefferson rap video.
Oh my God!
Sally in the background, sort of like doing fly girl stuff.
Oh my God!
Wow. Rosie Perezing.
The Founding Fathers are totally they're already rolling in the graves. That's why we have earthquakes up in Virginia.
They're rolling a fat one is what they're doing. They're rolling a fat one under the ground.
Yeah, they talk about it in their memoirs. He grew cannabis and smoked it because he had migraines. But hey, I guess today the DA be kicking in his door and arresting him. Although they do admit that they would, that today's Founding Fathers wouldn't be welcome in today's or the Founding Fathers wouldn't be welcome in today's military. Gee, I wonder why. Like George Washington wouldn't be welcome in today's army. If nobody understands the irony of that, George Washington founded the effing army. Just so we're clear, okay? So, and he wouldn't be welcome in it today. So, yeah, no, we don't live in bizarro world. I'm going to cut us off, Liam, because the top of the hour break is sneaking up on us. Ladies and gentlemen, don't go anywhere. Liam and I will be back in a few short minutes. Make sure you check his book out. That's right, he's an author as well. I'm going to make him plug it when we get back. So stay tuned. 3 short minutes. Don't go anywhere. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with hour number 2 here on tonight's live edition of Down the Rabbit Hole. It is October 9th, 2013. I am your host, Popeye from FederalJack.com. Hanging out with me again for at least the next 30 minutes is my good friend, Mr. Liam Scheff. Liam does have a radio broadcast here on the Truth Frequency Radio Network, and I'm going to have him plug that and his book before we get back into chatting about cannabis and the Founding Fathers really quick. Liam, plug your stuff shamelessly, my brother.
J-Dog and the Hizzle wants to read official story by Liam Scheff. Now, Sally Hemings and I sit around late at night, getting into bedtime time. Sorry, I saw something on TV that made me laugh. Now, Liam Scheff's book, Official Story, with J-Dog and Sally Hemings read while we lay down.
Wait, did you just call him Liam?
Yeah, Liam Scheff. I read his book, Official Story, Counter Argument for a Culture in Need and whatnot. So this book, set the shit straight, I understood the 9/11, but man, the whole AIDS motherfucker, you know what I mean? And they got that going down, and the vaccine stuff. Well, that also, I had my doubts and my tribulations, but then I read the book, and I was like, okay, 1, 2, 3, I got it lined up.
So now, I love the way he plugs his own stuff in the third person. This is why I bring him on, ladies and gentlemen, because it's easy to talk about like horrific things with Liam because of his comedian side.
I wrote a book. It's the very good book. It's called Official Stories. It's just all about stuff. It looks good with pink or blue. I wrote a book. It's a very good book. It's called Official Stories. It looks good with pink or blue. So if you read Official Stories, you'll get, I think, the best version of what the AIDS thing is about. It's not some virus that Lee Harvey Oswald invented while working with David Ferry while they were trying to kill JFK, although the CIA did kill JFK. It was a test that doesn't test for anything with people who are sick for a variety of reasons. That's just one chapter. I'll explain to you why dark matter is a mathematical invention from an astronomy that doesn't pay attention to electricity in space. And you Tesla fans should take note here. They don't pay attention to the electromagnetic force in outer space. If they did, they'd get rid of black holes, dark matter, dark energy, and other bits of invisible peanut butter because the electromagnetic force is so strong that's what forges galaxies. That's one chapter of my book, Chapter 9. Shakespeare didn't write Shakespeare. I can run you through that argument, but he didn't. He was a guy who had 2 illiterate parents, 2 illiterate daughters, and an illiterate granddaughter when he died, and he didn't own any of the plays of Shakespeare. Will Shakespeare didn't own any of the plays of Shakespeare. That's Chapter 7. Chapter 3 is, I think, a rather, quick and ferocious run down the rabbit hole, to quote your show's title, at the JFK conspiracy that I was very happy to get Jim Marrs, who wrote Crossfire, the definitive book on the Kennedy assassination, to read, and he said it was great and read like a punch to the gut. He said it was just a really great chapter. He was very generous and read it, reviewed it, and gave me some time, and we talked about, I actually added a couple things after talking to him, like the shims that they put under the gun to try to match the shooting, but he was very enthusiastic, and I was deeply appreciative. And I even sent him an AI-enabled home servant robot as a reward. Chapter 4, 9/11, another great chapter to run through. Chapter 8, the other science. Let's see, we've got sciences. Evolution is a lot different than people think. And no, I'm not a Christian, not a creationist, but you people who think that when you say Darwin and evolution, you're talking about the same thing, you're not. Darwin was an 18th century philosopher. And his philosophy doesn't really have much to do with any kind of math or science, and it's failed every kind of test. Survival of the fittest isn't a mathematical prospect. You can't do equations with it, and you can't figure out why the cell looks like a 3-dimensional jet fighter factory floor working it faster than any machine that we can make.
Can I ask you a question about survival of the fittest? And I've always pondered this.
Yeah.
When we were kids, there was always one kid that didn't make it to high school because he ate a marble or, he did some stupid something and,
Right.
he ate Drano or whatever. So how does that fit into it?
Yeah, but 9% of the rest of the a-holes and idiots did. The very weak and the very infirm die, but a lot of people with terrible qualities that you wouldn't want to see proceed that don't elevate the species. Also,
so saying, is that nature's way of weeding out the undesirable DNA?
Well, you could say then we're all undesirable because the geniuses of the thing have invented Terminator seeds. The argument falls apart in the sense of this question: what is life? You can say that there's a struggle to some degree. There's also a very cooperative nature to life, which is what Darwin didn't leave it out, by the way, but the guys who followed him did, and then Darwin picked up on them and re-additive thing. But life didn't come about because a bacteria was competing with a bacteria, and then one bacteria became a dolphin. Life came about for reasons that nobody can tell you why. Anybody who thinks they can tell you why life came about is playing at philosophy, not science. Life is here for reasons that we cannot explain. Cells are more complicated than anything anybody ever reasoned or rationed. Charles Darwin never saw a microscopic image of the inside of a cell. It just looked like protoplasm to him. It looked like goo, to quote a number of people who've talked about this problem. If he had looked, what he would have seen was something that looks like when you're a kid and you go and you see the biggest, fastest roller coaster that you've ever seen. It does 3 loops and then inverts. That's what it look like. It's full of tubules that can construct themselves and deconstruct themselves. It's full of micro machines that literally walk. down these tubules carrying heavy, heavy loads compared to their size, their microscopic size. It's full of floating little things that have, jets and propellers and move around the cell. And it's, this whole thing just reeks of genius, reeks of a kind of intelligence that we would imagine only came out of, the brightest group of MIT programmers making some sort of, computer software. So survival of the fittest doesn't begin to account for that. You have to, and I talk about this in Chapter 8 and Chapter 11, you have to begin to struggle with and the reality is uncomfortable for I think for the Christian and the non-Christian, or the religious and the non-religious alike. I think Christians will say, well, it's the God of the Bible. Well, you're in trouble if you say that, because those are a series of stories that you can't prove are true. But non-religious people who don't have any spiritual inclination or fashion themselves as atheists get into trouble, because you have to explain why a deeply, profoundly creative and intelligent universe exists at all. If the universe, why does it exist? There's no reason for it. So you either have to say, well, it's an accident. It's an accident that a clearly structured, ordered universe exists, which defies accident, right? It begs the definition and denies it. Or you have to say, well, there's more than we know. And the universe, which does not have a face, and we're not going to call Yahweh, and we're not going to bind to some strange, Babylonian, pre-Babylonian cult of thunder gods and say that that's the entire answer. Well, no, that's not it. That we're a myth-making species. We have to encounter ourselves on the road and say, what kind of animal are you? We're myth-making animals. We tell stories. We feel more comforted by our stories very often than our facts, which is one reason why I've given over to writing fiction at present, because you can only tell people so much truth before they just begin to lose their lunch. They can't take it. Can you imagine me? I fight with the Christians. I go, well, that's a nice story, but that's literal. It doesn't make any sense. And I fight with the atheists, and I say, well, it's a nice story that everything came about by accident. But this is a clearly mechanically, genius fashioned fractal geometry structure that seems to be self-replicating. And by self-replicating, I mean that it knows what it's doing, and then it's part of a larger system. And you can say, well, it's a fractal dynamic, and that's just a shortcut to saying that the universe is bloody intelligent, much smarter than we are. But if you give it a face and say that that's the only face of the universe, you've just parked yourself in a cul-de-sac, and you're stuck there. You're stuck with Brahma or Yahweh or Muhammad or any of the others. You're just stuck.
Well, it gets anthropomorphized. We have a tendency to do that.
That's wonderful. Yeah, we have a tendency to man.
That's also human ego, dude. Right? I mean, Think about it. That we think that the creator of all things in the universe looks like us, and that we are the center of. I talk about this all the time. That we think we're the center of all things. That's part of the reason that things are so off balance and we're so out of touch with everything. Because instead of being in touch with everything and realizing that we're not, made to govern all things on the planet and in the universe, it's we're part of something much, much bigger. And if we understood that, things would be much different. But that goes to the whole, levels of manipulation and control, and that's because they have to get us to the point where we're at now to be able to control us the way they do. Blah 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 blah. But I totally agree. The universe is, dude. Just look at the human body. Just look at the human body. Go see that bodies exhibit if anybody's never seen it. Okay, and go look at the nervous system and look at all the nerves, how it links back into the brainstem basically, and just they have it laid out. You couldn't design that by chance. It's not. Oh, look, it just happened. I mean, there's got to be some grand wisdom, some instructional manual that was, you know what I mean?
Well, and I don't anthropomorphize, and I don't tell you what the answer is, but in official stories, on Amazon stories, because official stories exist to protect officials, which, by the way, Jesse Ventura just about said to Alex Jones the other day, because we had him on the show, on the Robert Scott Bell Show, and I told him about my book, and he said, I like that, official stories. And then he was on Alex Jones. It was a while later, but he sort of mouthed that line. So I wrote Alex and said, dude, have me on the show if you're going to mouth my line. So so yes, it's all in there, and I'm not anybody to tell you what, you have to go on the George Norrie show to have somebody tell you what the God is. That's not any human being's business. It's an unknowable, indivisible, infinite force that we cannot reckon except maybe in poetry. That's it. It's as close as we get. And if you think you have the answer around a particular idea, and you're going to worship that, and you'll get on the other side and you go, man, was I wrong? Damn, I thought I was so right, but boy, I really got that wrong. He didn't have a big purple nose after all. So, there is I can only say that I lean east, and my philosophy leans east, and so in the Eastern tradition, it's easy for me to lean east because I wasn't born there, and I'm not caught up in the rhetoric or the dogma of it, So the beauty of it is that the Brahma, the Godhead figure, is, emerges from an unknowable infinity and dreams the world, literally dreams the universe I don't know if it's the Upanishads or some of the Vedas, but it dreams the universe. And in that dream are all these dreamers, and you and I are these dreamers in this dream, and we're dreaming that we're in the dream, but it's real to us. It's real to us. There's so many metaphors that work. The Taoist metaphor works very well, that the Tao is unknowable. The name of the Tao is not the true Tao. The Tao is everything. It is beyond up and down, good and evil, beyond left and right, beyond anything. And some of the New Agers get caught in there and say, nothing's good and nothing's evil. No, in the Tao is beyond good and evil. But here in the manifested world, there is bloody well good and bloody well evil. And you know it when you're doing it, because when you're doing good, people are smiling. When you're doing evil, somebody somewhere is screaming for you to stop. It's pretty easy to figure that out. And if you are evil, you're not listening when they ask, or if you're doing evil. So the Tao says that there's an infinite unknowable, and that from that manifests an infinity of paired opposites, up, down, left, right, good, evil, red, blue, all that kind of stuff. Silence and noise, cold and hot, and that we are a manifestation of that infinite into an energy cycle, a repeating energy cycle. So all of these things are pretty, loose, vague, esoteric, and I think that's about as good as we can get. But that's not what the book's about. But, we dip into it by chapter 11. But really, you're going to go CIA, JFK, 9/11, vaccination, HIV, Shakespeare, Big Bang, invented by a priest, Darwinism, essentially invented by... Both of these are not sciences. And I talk about the testable, resilient sciences that you can actually do, the maths that you can actually do to get a better handle. We look at plate tectonic theory, which really falls apart when you start to push at it. The idea that the world is just made of big plates that somehow churn around, and that continents sail around the globe willy-nilly without really any order at all, that some places subduct at not exactly the same rate of speed as they grow in other places, but 3 times faster, because there are 3 times as many expansion zones as subduction zones. So you don't think about these things, but these are things we were taught in school. Plate tectonics, Darwinism, Big Bang Theory, Shakespeare, right? American government, HIV testing, vaccination. We were all made to get vaccines while in school. So my book, Official Stories, is an antidote to all the bullshit that we had to swallow and be injected with when we were growing up. And that's why I wrote it. I wrote it to get a lot of the stuff that I had studied and learned and knew out of my system. And in one collected, short, 200, 6 by 9 inch, 200-page mini textbook full of jokes, full of information, and full of an encouragement to get you the reader to engage that wonderful thing called critical thinking, that form of slightly negative thought that peels away the things that don't work to find the true, the positive, and that's what the book's about. And if that doesn't make you slightly interested, then you're a Terminator. Then you, my friend, have achieved
Terminator status.
Terminator status.
A robot-like stasis. When is your radio show on, in case people want to tune in?
Oh my God, I'm hiring you as an agent. You're so kind.
That's all right. I'll be sending you a bill after the show.
Yeah, okay. I'm just a bill, just a plain old bill. I do a radio show on this fine network under the auspices of Chris Gio and Shari on Saturdays at noon in L.A., where it is bright and cesium active, and New York where it is bright and hopefully not being fracked.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the word cesium because I wanted to ask you about Fukushima and what you think about the newest news where first of all, they've owned up to the fact that they're dumping the radioactive water into the ocean. But besides that, I saw a clip where I think it was Russia Today, where it was Arnie Gunderson and the former Prime Minister of Japan, pretty much saying, "Yeah, Japan totally needs help. They don't have this under control." And then TEPCO admitted today that there was more workers that were exposed to radiation because they have like water leaks and radioactive water sprays on top of all over employees there that are cleaning it up. I mean, who's running the show over at TEPCO? The Marx Brothers? Seriously.
I love a Marx Brothers reference. Not a lot of people remember. Have you watched like Coconuts or?
Oh, dude, I grew up. I have all of them. I have all of them on DVD, thanks to my father. I may add.
Right. Does the audience know the Marx Brothers?
Yeah, but most of them, I would say most of them probably do. They'll get the reference.
Yeah, so Groucho Marx was a tall, funny Jewish comedian. Not a lot of people think of that, but he painted on a big grease paint mustache. So he wore round glasses, and he already had bushy eyebrows, but I think he extra bushed the eyebrows. And I was growing up a Groucho Marx nose. Did you ever buy one of those, like a plastic big nose and round glasses that had fuzzy eyebrows on it?
Yep.
Yeah. And he would walk leaning sort of into the wind at a good pace, and he was just very funny. And Harpo, who, I don't know, what's her name? Oprah named her production company after Harpo, was the one who never said anything and just had a horn and would make faces. And it all worked pretty well. And then there were some other brothers, I can't remember, Chico and Zeppo and whatever. And then there was one straight Marx Brothers. I don't mean that they were gay. I just mean he was a straight man who like would come in and play like, well, boys, we're having some sort of problem, and then the rest of them were like Bowery boys, urchins from New York. I think so. So yeah, the Marx Brothers are running the Fukushima power plant.
Well, that's what it sounds like, dude. I mean, we had a leak where, all workers were sprayed with radioactive water, and you look at them like, really? And then they admit, we need help. Really? Really? It only took you 2 years to admit that you needed help. Thank you for, causing a life-changing, possible life-ending event here on the planet. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know what to tell you except go do what I do every morning. Go to ENE News, ENE for Energy News, and read the headlines. And if you read the headlines, you'll read that a number of sprayers were worked, a number of workers were sprayed as a pipe burst. They're going to die. Don't tell me they're not going to die. They were sprayed with tens of thousands of becquerels of radiation, and you have to begin to do this strange calculus between becquerels and sieverts and mini-sieverts. And there are 1,000 millisieverts in a sievert, and a becquerel is a unit of radiation, but a sievert and a millisievert is a unit of damage done by a unit of radiation. So they have all this shop talk, which makes it very difficult to have a sane conversation. When they talk in sieverts, they're talking about actual damage, and the amount that these guys were exposed, 6 people have been irradiated, not much more than that, 37 million becquerels per liter, several tons of this stuff, Fukushima workers doused. These guys will they'll have radiation sickness and die. The stuff that's starting to alarm me is at the Vancouver Aquarium blog. They're reporting rivers of body parts from sea starfish. Just that these starfish have just been coming apart, and their little feet will still be going, but the arm will just come off. And this sounds terrible, and I don't know what it is. And they're saying now that they're seeing strange behavior reported in sea otters, which of course eat these things. And this should strike a chord in anybody paying attention to Marlon Perkins' world, Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom. Problems work their way up the food chain. And of course we're at the top of every food chain. Put ourselves there. We don't have to be. We could, and I didn't finish this conversation, but the amount of food that we grow in this country, GMO or not, is enough to feed the country probably 2 or 3 times over. but we stuff it into large farting animals. Large fighting animals. And after Rush Limbaugh gets finished, it's a Rush Limbaugh joke for anybody out there, we give it to cows. Cows? No one? All right. I'm all alone on this airwave. Go ahead. Any swing in the wind.
Don't tell me that you like GMOs.
So, so we feed food to cows. We feed about 16 to 20 pounds of grain to cows to get them to produce 1 pound of hamburger, 1 pound of flesh. We use about 2,000 to 5,000 gallons of water. I'm sorry, the number goes up depending on who you're looking at. Some people estimate it as high as 10,000 gallons of water to make an animal of that size produce 1 pound of edible flesh. That water has to go through them, and it comes out as nitrogen-filled feces and urine. That finds its way down into the Gulf and the other rivers that have been destroyed by nitrogen excess. So if, people said to me, and I was reading the literature 20-odd years ago that said that cows were a problem. The methane they produce is a problem. The feces they produce goes and creates dead zones. And so that used to be a problem, but the Gulf of Mexico is now dead because of the oil spill. So maybe that's not the problem anymore. But hunger is going to become a problem. And we feed all of this stuff to cows. And then on top of that, we feed genetically modified organisms to cows, which cause cancer, which cause all kinds of problems, which are then incorporated into the germline or the DNA of the animal that you then eat. Any particular McDonald's hamburger will have the remains of 1,000 animals in it, up to 1,000 animals into it. So good luck with that, fast food nation. So we have enough food. We don't distribute it equally because we've all gotten in the habit of eating like the kings of yore. And the kings of yore ate beef. They were called beef. Most people didn't eat beef. They ate what? Barley and rye and potatoes and squash and seeds and nuts and game. That is the wild animals that they could catch that multiplied very quickly and ate very low on the food chain, namely rabbits and pheasant and geese and birds. And that's what people ate all over the world. Now, we've been eating cows for so long that people don't think that they can eat anything else. But very soon we're going to have to. So that's a prediction I make about the near future, that this thing that I'm telling you is just elementary algebra. Just, volume in versus volume out, just calories, energy, food. That this will even, break on the hot and in Time magazine, and people say, "Are we eating too much beef?" And then people go, yeah, we need that 20 pounds of grain. We don't need the 1 pound of beef. We'll eat wheat and rice and barley again." So that's a prediction I make for the near future.
It'll be interesting to see. I mean, I know that some people, I've looked into this whole eating meat thing versus cutting back, because I've actually cut back on my meat and my chicken consumption, things like that, trying to eat more grains and things. But I've seen some interesting studies, we'll say, some research that says different blood types sometimes require a bit of a different diet. If someone has, and I don't remember exactly which blood types or what, but let's say someone's like A or B, and like something that A needs and will thrive off of if they eat. If someone with B wouldn't thrive off it, they might actually feel more sluggish. Whereas if they ate something different, they would, it would affect them differently. And I mean, I've seen the evidence. I don't know if I 100% believe it, but it's interesting to say the least. At the very least.
Well,
the break is sneaking up on us here.
Well, I'll hang out and talk about that a little. And again, it's not meat or no meat. It's just where on the food chain the meat comes from.
Roger. Gotcha. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. We're back. Final segment coming up, 3 minutes. You don't want to miss it. Get Liam's book. We'll be right back. Final segment, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight's live edition. Hanging out with my good friend Liam Scheff. Comedian, author, radio show host. Love having Liam on. He has an interesting way about him, we'll say, ladies and gentlemen. That's why you all love him too. You all know it. So, Liam, going into break, we were talking about food, and you did. I again, I credit you with bringing this topic up. It's important to look at, A, I guess, where we get our food from, B, how our food is treated. Just looking at the food industry and the way these huge, factory farms and stuff are set up, just being aware of how the food I'm eating is being treated alone makes you look at everything different. And again, it starts to make you look at maybe what you're putting in your body. Am I eating the right things? Am I getting the right diet? And that led me to looking into that study I was telling you about, that certain blood types, they could, I guess, certain blood types benefit from eating maybe more meat than other blood types, where, they seem to benefit from, maybe more grains or whatever. Have you ever seen that the information of the study on that?
Well, yeah, it's called the blood type diet, and various claims have been made for it. And I don't really trouble myself with it because I don't tell anybody to be a vegan unless they have, cancer, and they're really trying to clean their liver, unless they have some sort of long-term illness and they're trying to clean their liver. I really only talk about where in the food chain you're grabbing it. Because if you're eating rabbits that eat clean local grass, or you're eating some, goat's milk and occasional one of the older goats and you eat that, or some chickens that you have on your land, I think you'll have a long, healthy life as anybody can have. If you eat anything from the factory farm system, you're getting a 1,000-fold of the pesticides and hormones and antibiotics than you think you're getting. And if you don't think you're getting any, you're getting 1,000 times more than that. So we're in deep trouble. I don't prescribe a one-size-fits-all diet. I did, big part of my life is studying diet, but nothing's perfect. I studied macrobiotics, and that's a look at diet through the lens of the main principle is eat locally, eat in season. Now, if you actually applied eat locally and in season, everybody in this country would be barely eating. Compared, with your trip to the grocery store would last about 8 minutes, because you get whatever carrots grew locally, or beets, or ground vegetables, root vegetables, and whatever grain and beans grew locally, and whatever oil from a seed or a tree or an animal that was producing, and whatever milk from whatever small animal, or if you had grazing cattle, and that would be it. And you wouldn't have sugar unless you lived in the tropical climates and you had sugar cane growing. You'd have honey in some places. You'd have fruit seasonally. You'd have berries. And you'd have apples, and they wouldn't be these gargantuan, multicolored things. They would be sort of half green, sort of mottled, half green, half red, semi-sour, very low glycemic, and very little sugar in them, very refreshing, a lot of vitamin C, I guess, a lot of tart acid, which is good for you. And we certainly wouldn't be eating dates in Minnesota unless you're being kind to your date, and you do that kind of thing, which I support when you go out and make sure to. And you wouldn't be eating bananas anywhere in the country except deep in maybe South Texas, maybe parts of Florida. You see what I'm getting? We don't eat locally. You'd eat nothing that came out, because there'd be no need for it. You would dry food, you would can food, and you would preserve food. You'd cut up vegetables and salt them and put them in glass jars and seal it for 3 days and make it into a pickle and put that in a cold vessel of some sort, either a refrigerator or an underground thing. Anyway, we could have wonderful food, and we'd all be pretty damned healthy, and nobody would have to be a vegan, because meat would be pretty hard to get anyway. And if you were a vegan, you'd have to work, get enough pulses and beans and that sort of thing. But if you got rid of the international food delivery system that we now put into place, most people would have no idea what to eat. And most of the way that we live in cities like New York, Los Angeles, Chicago would just fall apart. That you didn't have bread that had styrofoam preservatives in it, plasticizing preservatives on the shelf so that you could squeeze it, but you had to go to an actual baker. And there was maybe one baker in every big neighborhood. Well, that would be a great place to go. And you'd rely on their bread, and their local sourdough yeast culture would be something that you ate, and that would be good for your stomach and your intestines. And you'd feed your children on that, and you'd grow to love that bread, and that would identify an area. Or the sauerkraut that they make, the pickled cabbage, whether the the Asian cabbages with the very, very spicy, or the German cabbages just with salt. Areas of the world used to have distinctive foods, and I think they'll go back to having distinctive foods. But we absolutely lost our memory of what that is. So that's something I've been involved with for, 42, 21 years. And I'm really glad that was my introduction to adulthood, was apprenticing in macrobiotics. It was a big deal for me to find a mentor. It really turned my life around and gave me a tool that I could use to work myself through colds and sicknesses that, I didn't have to, and it doesn't prevent you from getting sick. Maybe it prevents you from not getting everything that everybody else gets, but you still have your problems and your traumas. But I'm just, I do embrace that local, more and more actually as I get older. All I want is local, in season, and I don't want anything that's not. But it was a struggle. I came from a fast food, and it was a struggle. It was a damn struggle to get out of sort of cookies and ice cream and cereal, which is and hamburgers, which is the American diet. So,
yeah.
I don't know what we were talking about.
No, we were talking about food. I agree. The whole bread thing was making me think, just making me remember back to, even being a kid. When I was a kid, you had to go to you could go to the food store, but there weren't these big mega Walmart type stores like there are now. You had your local food store, and there was still a local butcher when I was a kid. There was still the local bakery, or a bakery that, maybe one town over, in the place next door, the town next door, and everybody went to that bakery. But usually, even small towns had a little bakery or something in it, and that's where you went and got your bread. And people were less wasteful because, it wasn't so easy to go to the Walmart and get, the extra loaf and a half. Get the loaf and a half, same price, but cheaper here at, whatever mart, El Cheapo Mart, and it's an extra half a loaf of bread, and then people are wasteful with it. It sits in the refrigerator and goes moldy. People don't eat it, and because it's cheaper, now they have a little bit more money in their pocket, and they go, oh, let's go out to eat. And then they waste the money on going out to eat, and then the food that they bought at, Extra Food Mart or whatever is now rotting in their refrigerator, and it goes to waste. Whereas if you had to buy that loaf of bread from your local baker, and you only had a couple days before it went bad, you were more inclined to cut that thing up and use it, make recipes with it. That's how I do my stuff. I make it so that if I use fresh food and stuff, because I can't stand stuff going to waste. I can't stand throwing food out. So I force myself to cook because it's got to go. It's fresh, it's organic, and if I don't use it, it's going to go bad, and it's going to irritate me that I wasted money. So I have to cook it. And then if I cook it, you could, I'll spend one day a week where I'll cook. Like my mother used to do this, because I do most of the cooking in my house because I like to cook. And I'll cook food for 2 or 3 days, for the next 2 or 3 days, and I'll do maybe 1 or 2 dishes, and I'll have everything ready to go for the next couple of days. But I want to do it so A, the food doesn't go bad, and B, then I can just go in the refrigerator whenever I want, or my wife can, and take whatever I made and have at it when you're hungry. But I like it. Kind of forces me to cook and focus more on that because I use local, because it can go bad, as opposed to, oh look, my onion will last 6 months because I bought it at Walmart, and it's made by Monsanto. It's stamped right here. I'd rather eat locally. I'd rather eat organic and healthier, even if it means being forced to eat smaller portions for right now.
Everybody loves this conversation when we get to talking about food. Everybody feels better when you talk about the local thing in your environment. So if you're in the Southwest, Anasazi beans, and people are making tortillas, not just buying them, they're making them, and they're the squash dishes, and then they're the local game for people who eat meat. There's the various local game, and that all gives every area of the country a distinctive food culture, and we've lost all of that. In fact, that was intentional that we lost it. It was programmed in that everybody, Ray Kroc's McDonald's had to be everywhere, and then Wendy's had to be everywhere. Dave, what was his name? Dave, I can't recall his last name. But anyway, he founded Wendy's, died of a heart attack. So that these things had to be everywhere, they had to be disgusting, and they had to be homogenized. In other words, they had to be boiled down and cut to the same size. So everybody had to have the same size hamburger but not everybody really needed a hamburger, which is made of cows. And we've gotten out of the habit of eating game. Now our fish is very polluted and our game is polluted because the Monsanto is spraying everything everywhere. There are deer in places where Monsanto sprays heavily that have undiagnosable diseases. Well, guess what? They're eating the hedgerows that are sprayed with glyphosate, with Roundup. So we have so much rehabilitation work to do that I doubt that really we can do it. And I do predict, and this is maybe a change of pace for most food shows, but I do predict a general die-off of the human population, die down, let me say, of the human population through the, accelerating into the 2030s, lasting until the 2050s to 70s. I genuinely predict a die back because there only got to be 7 billion of us since, 1930, 50, since the beginning of what was called the Green Revolution when we were spraying oil and natural gas on fields to make them produce much more than they ever had before. And even stuff we thought of as local food may not be very local, like the wheat varieties may not really be very local. They may be long hybridized and made uniform in a laboratory, not genetically modified, but bred to a point that they weren't really as nutritious as they should have been, or cross varieties that weren't quite what ancient wheat used to be. So so we got a long way down until we get to something sustainable, and I think that's what this century, this 50 years looks like. We were talking about Fukushima. I'll put it to you, Greg. What do you see? Sorry, I'm quoting Animal House, and only I know it. I'll put it to you, Popeye. What do you see happening as a result of Fukushima?
Well, I already see a problem with birth defects and everything else. What I see in the foreseeable future, I see the whole way of life changing. I mean, the whole west coast of the United States is polluted and contaminated. The Pacific Ocean is pretty much contaminated. Tuna, radio, a year ago, I was talking about this last week, a year ago a study came out, saying that not one, not two, not three, not four, but every frigging fish that they've randomly caught and selected out there tested positive for cesium. Okay? Not good. And this is off the coast of California. Not good. And then now TEPCO's admitting, we dumped all this radioactive water into the ocean. Oopsie daisy. But hey, don't worry, the ocean will filter out. It'll dilute it. I mean, dude, I don't know, like, it's the Marx Brothers are running things over there, and people buy it. People are like, they got it under control. I mean, their way of filtering out the radioactive particles out of the water is a net, a silt net, like a silt fence. Oh, yeah, because that's going to work. Right, well done, gentlemen. Well done. In fact, I think I'd rather have the Marx Brothers running things over there. They actually might get something accomplished. What I see in the foreseeable future is the food chain being drastically altered. I see people's health being affected by this. I see I'm willing to bet you we're going to see a lower mortality rate on the West Coast and all over the country, because all over the country people have been exposed to it. But the West Coast itself, residents, I'm sure we'll see we'll start to see a higher death rate over the next few years. And then the food coming out of there, too. I mean, if you're eating food from California, you can might as well assume it's radioactive, because most of their rain comes from the Pacific Ocean. And I don't want to hear, the radioactive particles stay it's not going to travel up when the water vapor gets evaporated. Right. Do you know that for a fact? Do you? Do you really know that for a fact? Because I don't know that. And they're not testing it for it. So guess what? I'm going to assume the worst and prepare for that.
Yeah, can I get an amen?
Well, I mean, it's really frightening, you look at the whole West Coast situation, dude. It's like I feed my cats tuna. For years, I give them tuna every other day. They each get a half a can, and I don't buy them crap tuna, but I get them decent human grade tuna. Not anymore. I already give them beef and other stuff. Like I don't give them canned cat food or anything. But I'm gonna have to change up the fish that I feed them. And if I'm still going to feed them tuna, it's going to have to be not, every other day. It's going to have to be maybe once or twice a week, because I'm going to have to go elsewhere to get it. And wherever elsewhere is, it ain't going to be 89 cents a can. That's for damn sure. The only stuff that's going to be 89 cents a can is the can that glows in the dark. So not only do you buy tuna and you could feed your animals, but if you run out of light bulbs or you can't pay your electric bill, you can just put the can of tuna on your nightstand and glowing green, you can read Liam's book.
And Liam's book is official storage, which is available at Amazon.com. Liam's approaching the 17th green.
Ladies and gentlemen, he's coming up to the green. He's taking out his 5 wedge, and he's hold on. Liam's taking a swing, and bad swing, bad swing.
It looks like he is taking the 9 from the bag. He is pummeling the golf cart with it. A number of people have come to. He's cursing. We can't hear what he's saying. We believe he's addressing them as, we can only say mother effers. He's punched a woman squarely in the jaw. The police. That's it for Liam Scheff today. Wild World of Sports.
Liam Scheff. that kills me when you said that before.
And
Liam Scheff. Way to murder your own name, Liam.
I know. Hey, don't give anybody any ideas. The Fukushima thing gets drastically worse, and I'm writing about it in my 15 by 15 series because I think that the reality of the West Coast will look so different in 30 or 40 years. People think that this will blow over, but it won't. I genuinely predict Hollywood will make a concerted effort and decision to move within 10 years. And that cities on the East Coast and the Northeast, even in South America, that are up for grabs, due to financial problems or a booming economy, will be Hollywood too. If people think I'm kidding, I'm not, and I am writing about because there's some things you can only project, and those have to come into the realm of fiction, and you have to include, you have to write it from the point of view of a story. And I'm not going to deliver a story as a news item. I'm going to deliver it as a story with characters and something you can follow along with. But I still think that that's a more than reasonable prediction. Hugh Jackman and all the rest of these guys don't want to get cesium-related, strontium-related cancers, so they're going to move. Now, a lot of people who are poor are going to stay there, and I predict, obviously, cancer rates are going to go up first. The thyroid, skin, anything superficial, lung. Unexplained incidents of lung cancer in non-smokers. Why? They're breathing it in, right? And United States, and Lord knows who will get hammered the worst. I mean, I don't know if it's in the high points of Colorado or the Rockies. I hope not. If it all, bunches up in Riverside, California, in the valley, or if it makes it over the ridge, I don't know. I'm not that kind of an expert, but we'll find those experts in the next few years. They'll pop up and they'll say, well, I'm an expert in geothermal distribution of particulate matter. I'll say, what? I can tell you where it's raining cesium. Okay. We'll figure this stuff out, but only as it's happening, usually after the fact. And then somebody will say it was intentional, and, they did it so that they would destroy California. And you'll get, it was all intentional. They meant to. No, they didn't. I'll tell you what they did. They were human. And have a great capacity for technological innovation. We're great tool makers, but we have a terrible, terrible ethical meter. We don't understand that the consequences of our actions are quite serious, and we all remember this from childhood. Well, what happens if I stand? Okay, I'm going to stand. I saw Mary Poppins, so I'm going to stand on the ledge outside. I know we're on the second floor, but there's a hedge down there, and I'm going to open this umbrella and jump. It worked in the movie. We don't necessarily think quite as far ahead as we should. We don't usually measure twice and cut once, as they say in nothing. Dead silence.
No, you cut out for a second.
Liam Scheff is approaching the green.
Yeah, as Liam Scheff is approaching the green, suddenly dead silence because Skype sucks. at the worst moments.
Yeah, I know. And if I cut out again, you just reconnect me. You can do that quickly.
Actually, in fact, hold on, I'll do it right now. It'll take 2 seconds. Watch this. What? TikTok. Look at that. Bam. Say 1, 2, 3 testing.
1, 2, 3. We're hopefully on the air on the Federal Jack Popeye hour.
There you go. Liam is back on the green, and he putts. Oh, and it's in the hole. Yes,
it's in the hole.
Crappy golf references. Do you think? Let me ask you this: do you think their response is at least criminal? Like 2 years, and you're just admitting, oh yeah, our best effort is a silt fence, and you just look at them. Really?
Yeah, and the NRC, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, is now admitting that it's going to be going essentially offline because of the government shutdown. General Electric, I think Mitsubishi and another company are responsible for building the Fukushima reactor set. They already exploded, and there's nothing that anybody can do about that. Now people are saying that the area should have been evacuated within 300 kilometers. 8 or something like that, because they're finding radioactive material that from the initial explosion, which they're now considering to be perhaps a kind of nuclear explosion. Anyway, it's very, very, very serious, and it's not going to go away. Even if you held them all criminal and liable, I suppose it wouldn't make a difference because they have to figure out what they're going to do. So here's the question: what are they going to do? What are they actually going to do? And I think the answer is they're going to have to create as much of a sarcophagus. They're going to have to bomb it with radon, which will absorb some of the neutron material. They're going to have to pile lead and concrete on top of it. And they're going to know that some of it's constantly going to be leaking into the groundwater. There's not... It's the movie, you're not sure you like, but you sort of like better than the hero. Like the Han Solo character, the Sidney Carton from Tale of Two Cities, who says, don't worry. All you have to do is get over there to no man's land. You'll be fine. And what about you? I'll be right up behind you. And he's not going to make it, but you don't know why. And then he opens his vest a little, and he's already bleeding, and you know that he took the bullet that you didn't think he took. This is Japan. This is Japan. Japan has a mortal wound. Japan as a country will cease to exist in any competitive form within 20 years. This thing is too close to Tokyo, which is the economic powerhouse and center. They could move a lot of the stuff to the west in-facing coast, but it's not a perfect protection. The people in the south will stay. I think eventually Tokyo will have to be more or less abandoned.
People have already died from cancer, and then I love the official responses, but it's not related to the Fukushima disaster. Really? Really?
No, right. It's not related to the guy who ran it and was there all the time died of radiation.
That's what I'm saying. Like the people the people that were the former head of the place at the time, he's now dead. A bunch of other people are all dead, but that has nothing to do with the fact that they were exposed to any radiation.
And of course it does. And the evacuation of Tokyo won't happen immediately, and it may not happen for a while. But if there's another mass event like a tsunami or a major earthquake and the material is thrown about, they're just going to have to. Now, this isn't reported very often, but this is prime farmland, and Japan is a very small island compared to like Australia or something, or it's very small compared to Europe. But it's got it's had a gross national product on par with Europe and the United States at times during, or European countries in the United States at times during the last 30 years, even though it's been slumping. So this country, I think, is understanding something. They don't want to admit that they have a mortal wound and that they're going to have a massive diaspora and that they're going to have to leave most of the central part of that island. I don't know what else can be done, and that people in the...
Yeah, but where do they go? I mean, we only have about a minute left, but I mean, where do they go? I mean, even our West Coast is, our food chain. If you only want to look at it as like from like an isolationist standpoint, like all the way down to like just the country, we're already being affected. So where would they go? I would assume anywhere in the Pacific, there, all the Philippines, all that is all going to be irradiated. Hawaii, where parts of Russia, China, Korea, where do they go? You know what I mean? Everybody in that area is kind of screwed.
Well, all I can tell you is the answer is not in my book, Official Stories, but I hope if you enjoy, I hope if you enjoyed this, you buy the book. I don't know. I love Japan, and I love being there. I loved visiting. I love the art and the culture of the art and philosophy that comes out of there. And when this happened, I cried, bitter tears. I don't really know what to do.
We'll figure something out, man. I mean, we have to.
They go to Vietnam.
We have to look at this, and we'll figure something out. But we have to look at this and at least admit there's a problem. It boggles the mind that 2 years later they're like, oh yeah, okay, radioactive water is seeping in, and people still aren't worried about it. It's like, oh, don't worry, they'll fix it. Really, they lied to us for 2 years. Let's come to grips. And honestly, I like Liam said, I don't know what to do. I mean, there is going to be sickness and stuff from this. It's an unfortunate side effect, but it is what it is. Anyway, we're out of time, ladies and gentlemen. We need to figure something out. Go buy Liam's book. Research more on Fukushima. I'll see you all again tomorrow.